Welcome, everyone. This is December 9th. This is our final Bicentennial Mini-Science presentation from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. McGill is located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. McGill has long honored and respected and acknowledged these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and the waters where we meet, where we work, where we exchange information, where we understand everything about the land, about the world, about nature, about the work we do. For me personally, I understand from the Anishinaabe that there is a very important teaching that says you should always be aware of whatever you're doing, that it goes beyond you, that it goes for 7 generations. What you think, what you write, what you talk about. And I think we've pretty much honored that with this bicentennial series. All our speakers have made note of 200 years of working together, exchanging information, sharing. Our speaker tonight will be introduced by the student ambassador, Audrey Gray.
Thank you, Ingrid. Hi, my name is Audrey Gray, and I am one of the student ambassadors for the McGill Mini-Science Bicentennial Lecture Series. And it is my honor to introduce to you tonight's speaker, Principal and Vice-Chancellor Fortier. Principal Fortier has a long-standing relationship with McGill University. Not only has she been serving as Principal and Vice-Chancellor of McGill since September McGill 1972, PhD at McGill in crystallography in 1976. Among her many achievements, Principal Fortier was appointed an Officer of the Order of Canada in 2018. She is also an Officer of France's National Order of Merit, a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and was named a specially elected Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada in 2015. As a student ambassador, I had the honor of meeting with Principal Fortier, where I got to know more about her own academic and career journey and her visions for the future of McGill. Please join me in welcoming her as she presents tonight's lecture, The Future of the University.
Merci Audrey et bonsoir à vous tous. Merci d'être ici ce soir pour cette conversation. It's a very, very interesting topic, and of course one that is very close to my heart. But apart from that, one that I've discussed with so many colleagues across the world. I'm happy to share some of the thoughts I have on this topic. First of all, I'd say, of course, as we all know, we are living in a very interesting time because this is a time of such rapid changes in our world, on our planet and in society. It's also a time where we're facing really big challenges. And when we're starting to realize that we have to come together as people living on the same planet to address some of these big issues. With the pandemic, of course, we've had our lives disrupted. We have had to learn how to work and to socialize, and of course, to do research and to learn in very different ways. But of course, we all know that we can't blame it all on the pandemic. Many of the changes that we're seeing today were coming our way for quite a long time. And it is due to many factors. The fact that we really are living in a global environment, the fact that there's been such rapid change in technology, great advances in technology, and these change in technologies have affected us in the way we connect to one another in our social fabric. I have to say that many people now are talking about the future of the university as a result of the pandemic. But at McGill, it started way before that because we're entering into a 3rd century. And we've been thinking and talking about what do we want to be as a university as we enter our 3rd century. That's a very important topic at McGill. And so we've had I think the great benefit of being able to think about it way before the pandemic made it a very crucial topic to talk about. Now, I will say as a starting point that there are 3 elements to the mission of universities. And they are teaching, of course, learning, teaching, research, and service to the community. So I would be one who would say that these three elements will remain. I think that these are the fundamental elements of a university, of a mission of a university. However, how they will be expressed is, of course, changing. And certainly, if one thinks of how these were expressed when the first university was founded some over 1,000 years ago and what it is today, it's quite different. And the way I describe our university and the university generally today is with three words: open, connected, and purposeful. So this is a very different picture than what sometimes people describe as the ivory tower, a place that was disconnected from society. This is no longer the case. It's certainly not at McGill, and I don't think in many universities. So this is, I think, something to keep in mind. Also, universities have long been described as a place that was a ladder, a social ladder, so that one could improve their own situation by gaining education in universities. And today we are thinking about this in its broadest term, and that is in the term of a driver of social inclusion. And that is, we think, most universities, but certainly at McGill, a very important element of the role of universities. Just a few words about how universities are changing in terms of learning and in terms of teaching. You know, because of those changes, we're well aware that the learning environment that we provide to those who come to our institution has to be an environment that prepare them well. Prepare them well for jobs, because most of the people who attend university do want to have employment, enjoyable employment, but prepare them well also for the future. And a future that we cannot even imagine. We just have to think of some of the new elements of our own daily life, whether it is all the IT tools that we use and the environmental challenge and so on, that did not even existed, say 20 years ago, that we didn't even talk about 20, 30 years ago. And so we know that things are changing, and what students will be looking at in 50 years is probably an environment we cannot fully envision today, and we cannot predict. But the one thing that we can predict is that we will all have to continue to learn throughout our lives. That is a certainty. And I don't think it's a new certainty, actually. I think that's been pretty much the case for a long time, that learning is one of the most important human activity as we continue in our lives, whether it's professional or personal life. So learning is so important. And I always hear the words of our Dean of Continuing Studies at McGill, because it's been a very common nowadays to talk about lifelong learning. Everybody in society and governments are talking about lifelong learning. She talks about long life learning to make the point that people who are at university today, particularly are students who are in their first experience at the university, who are of a young generation, are likely to live to be 100-year-old. And so they're going to have to be learning all their lives through a life that is likely to be a long life. And for them to enjoy that life that's going to be long, I think learning will be an essential element, both at a personal level and a professional level. You know, I played sometimes some little games like, is there anything I'd like to do for, say, 50 years? The same job for 50 years? And the answer is pretty clear, no. I think every one of us like to have new challenges, new opportunities. And of course, the world will present ourselves with new challenges, new opportunities. So we all have to continue learning so that we can enjoy those. And also in our personal lives, the things we can enjoy, whether there's culturally or sports activity or whatever is interesting to us, are activities that are part of our learning. And I think that is important to think about these long lives, and long lives that will be enjoyable and fruitful will continue to require us to learn and to enjoy learning. It's so important that learning is something that we find as enjoyable. And I've said quite a few times, the best thing a student from McGill can get out of their education when they graduate is the confidence in their ability to learn. That to me is the most important part of their degree, is they come out and they say, I know how to learn. I have the confidence that whatever comes my way, I'll be able to learn how to do it, to learn how to bring my talents to it, because I know how to learn. And even more importantly, I enjoy learning. So this is, I think, part of how we see universities is to create that joy of learning and that confidence in our own ability to learn. I've been, as I said, part of many, many discussions internationally, and particularly I'm co-chair of a global future council on education at the World Economic Forum. And so we've been talking a lot about education and what we will need for education of the future. And I think what is, to me, exciting about where we got to is that we have really seen that what will be most important for all of us is to really nurture and cultivate our human skills. And of course, we learn and we know a lot about AI and so on, but we have unique skills as humans that most of us do not think will be replicated by machines or algorithms. So in the work that we've been doing there, we came out with 4 buckets of skills. And I'll mention them to you because they truly are human skills. The first bucket has to do with creativity and innovation. The second bucket is digital literacy. Of course, many people might interpret that as digital literacy and that you can use all these tools that are digital tools, but we mean much more than that. We mean digital literacy in fully understanding how these digital tools have an impact on society, on humans, their social impact, and the ethics also of using such tools. So that is a literacy that we must all gain as our world moves more and more into a digital. We also talk about global citizenship and civic responsibility. Again, I think some skills that most of us would not think would be replicated by a machine or an algorithm. And finally, the 4th bucket was inter and intrapersonal skills. And how do you develop that sense of understanding who you are, understanding your own behavior and own reflections on yourself and so on, and bringing that to interact with other people. And these will be more and more important. So I think, as you can see, we put a lot of, I think, value into exploring and making use of the skills that we have as human beings that are so important. And that is something that we need to develop in our universities as part of the way we learn, as part of delivering a curriculum that might make you an expert in a particular discipline, which is still very, very important, but really on top of or inside how you learn how to develop your own expertise in a particular discipline to develop these other skills. And of course, there are many, many examples of how we do that in universities by bringing people to work together, to develop common projects, to lead common projects, and so on. These are important aspects of learning that we have at McGill and many universities that help us develop these skills in addition to the deep learning that we acquire as we come to universities. I have to add also to that there's a way that people describe the kind of individual that we want to see graduating from universities today. There's a group, a design group in California, IDEO, that calls it a T-shaped individual. So an individual that has deep expertise in one area, but also across the horizontal line of the T, the ability to connect with others and to bring their deep knowledge to work with others and to explore with others ways to contribute to society. So that's a few things I say about teaching, but also I think about all of the things that are happening at our universities, the various part outside of the curriculum, the formal curriculum that help students acquire those skills, such as the entrepreneurship, innovation center, all of the community-based projects that students gets involved in, both nationally or locally and internationally. These are all great part of an education at a university today that adds those very important skills to our education. Of course, on the research side, I think the pandemic has really made it clear to all of us how important it is to pursue both basic and applied research. You know, mRNA science is not new. In fact, we have a giant in this discipline at McGill, Nahum Sonnenberg, who was studying mRNA back 30 years ago. And in fact, one of the persons in the Moderna company was trained by Nahum, and he did his PhD in mRNA. So this is not new research. What is new is that we were able to use all of the knowledge that was there very quickly to produce a vaccine for the pandemic. And what is interesting to know is that there were a few companies that we know of course, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca wasn't using mRNA technology, but Pfizer and Moderna. But Moderna was founded 10 years ago, and it wasn't for the pandemic related to COVID. They didn't even know about it. It was for other conditions such as cancers in particular. And so that very basic research that is developed in our country and elsewhere on mRNA can be used for different diseases. But the important thing is to have that very fundamental knowledge that was there at the beginning. But it is important also to be ready to put it to work. And that's the applied research part, I think, of the equation. Unfortunately, I would say, unfortunately, it doesn't get as much visibility often as the fundamental research, but it's equally important. Most great discoveries will need great also elements from applied research, whether it is engineering and how to produce that particular compound, for example, at scale for large distribution. So it's extremely important that we pursue also the applied research that help us bring those discoveries into society or into the marketplace. And we were very fortunate also on that side, because there were many people who were ready to do that, and that has helped us in this crisis. So to me, I think one of the great thing about, one of the silver lining, I should say, it's not great, but it's silver lining certainly, is that we have realized, I think very clearly, that we need both discovery research that people do just out of curiosity, just because it's part of our human condition to want to ask questions, to want to explore, just for the sake of acquiring new knowledge. But it's very important also that we have applied research, purpose-driven research. Could be discovery or applied, but it's there for a purpose, because people want to find solutions to cancer, to climate change, particularly, or I think there's very important research that has to be done right now about the social aspect of what we're seeing in our technologies and in the sciences, the social aspects of seeing inequities around the world, or seeing climate change and sustainability issues, and having people whose purpose is to address those kind of huge issues that we have in our world. So that I think is very important in terms of the contributions of research, inquiry at universities, and will, I think, remain a very important part. In fact, more important part of what universities do, because increasingly it is very hard for private sector to pursue those avenues at the very beginning. Curiosity is a very high risk endeavor, and more private sectors, companies do not have the ability to continue doing curiosity driven research. And so the universities really have that role as the prime ones, having the responsibility of doing this kind of curiosity driven research, which most likely at one point will be of great use to society. And I often give as an example the laser, because, you know, when lasers were first studied by researchers, it was just to look at atomic vibration, how interesting it is. It's a great thing in chemistry. And that was the purpose of their research. It was to learn about that. They had no clue that we would use lasers eventually to scan products with those code, or to use them for surgery and so on. I don't think they even imagined that there might be such use for the basic fundamental research they were doing. But of course, I think the ingenuity of human being, their creativity and innovation means that eventually it will make its way to society, with people having the imagination to see how you can take those basic discoveries and bring them to society. So I think that's also very important for us to think about, that something that might not look useful at a particular time may be, in fact, extremely useful later on. We cannot predict the future often with accuracy. The future will always surprise us, and I hope many times in very good and powerful ways. The third element that I mentioned about universities' mission is service to the community. And that's always been the case, but I think it's been evolving in very good ways in the last several years. First of all, I think because we realize now that while we may be located in a particular city, in a particular province, in fact, we live in a global way. And so service to the community has to be taught nowadays in a much broader context, service to a global community. And I think that's a very, very important part of our mission. It's a very important, I mentioned it at the beginning, that universities see themselves as motor of social inclusion. But again, not just locally, globally. And that has made a lot of us think about how we can create more opportunities for people across the globe who may not be in situation as privileged as we are here in Canada, to have access to high quality education. And that's the second, I think, silver lining of the pandemic. We're so much more equipped to do that with all of the platforms that were quickly developed for us as the pandemic came our way. So we have, I think, much more ability to bring into our learning environments people in different situations across the world who would not be able to come to study in person at our university. I say to people often that not so long ago, the saying was think globally, act locally. That was how I heard it for so many times. But it's not true anymore. It's think globally and act globally. And I think it's so important. If I think of one of the aspects of the future of the universities, it is that global presence of university that will be part of our future. There's a few thoughts to leave you with. You know, we know that the universities were created a long, long time ago. But I think we're facing a time now where the mission of university has never been more important. This is a place where people meet to learn together, to learn about other culture, other perspective, other ways of thinking, and to think about how we can shape our world, our future world. We know about our past and we've learned from it. We know of some of the flaws of things that we've done in the past. And so we're all called upon to be more innovative, more committed, gain an additional sense of our responsibilities and of our role in this world to shape a better world for all people. And, you know, you may have certainly heard many a times the saying to build back better. I call it actually to build forward better, because I think that is a fundamental role of universities, of people who have the privilege of being at a university, is to answer that call. We know they're extremely bright. We know they're engaged. We know they have a lot of leadership. So this is a call to build forward better. And I think I'll end with that, my introductory remarks. And I hope that many of us are hearing that call and will respond to it. I think that we have a chance. We do have a chance to build forward better. It is not a matter of talent. It is not a matter of hard work. We know people are willing to do that. It's a matter of seeing ourselves as citizens of the planet and seeing ourselves as being able to shape that planet in a way that will be better for everybody.
Thank you, Principal Fortier. I will now be reading you some of the questions that have been sent in. So our first question is, what was the greatest challenge in transitioning the university into being largely virtual at the beginning of the pandemic?
Yes, so of course, you know, people know of the technological or the challenge, the operational challenges. We had to pivot in a very, very small period of time to from in-person teaching to online teaching. That was a huge challenge, and we were able to do that. I think another challenge was, of course, even bigger than that, was to deal with all of the uncertainties related to the pandemic. When we closed the university on March 13, at the request of the province, the question that everybody asks is, when are we going to reopen in person? Nobody knew at that time. Nobody knew. And the good decision that was made, and I give credit to our Emergency Operations Center on that decision, was to say, let's stop our teaching activities for 2 weeks. We'll pivot, we'll move everything online in those 2 weeks. We'll be well prepared. So rather than try to do something that wasn't ready, let's take the time. 2 weeks, they worked so hard, but we were able to do it 2 weeks. But what the 2 weeks afforded us is the ability to answer that question. I can tell you that after the 2 weeks, we knew that we would not return for the fall, for that winter term in person. We could tell students we're not returning in person for the remainder of this fall term. And so that allowed people to make decisions that were important to them, particularly those students who do not live in Montreal. They had to think, do I go home? What do I do? Do I wait? Maybe the university will be back in person in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. At that point, we knew enough. We had gained enough knowledge to say, you can make your own decision now because we know we're not going to bring you back in person. And then, of course, that allowed us, as the situation evolved, to say we're not going to have the summer in person and so on and so forth. But that level of uncertainty at the beginning was very hard on everyone. And we were aware of that, very, very hard. But I think that the right decisions were made here to help all of us and to develop also the various measures that we could put in place to keep people safe.
Thank you. Okay, our second question is, what are some of the ways McGill has demonstrated a drive towards social inclusion this year?
Well, this year, actually, we're continuing on the path of social inclusion at McGill because it's been part of the DNA, I would say, of our university for so long. We're always have committed to accessibility to students, no matter what kind of economic situation they come from. And that's been part of McGill's, I think, commitment for a long, long time. The one datum from the various rankings that I'm most proud of is that we're the #1 in the country in terms of bursaries for our students as a function of our operating grant. And this is through deliberate choices on our part. We have invested 30% of any additional fee revenues into the bursary program. When we go on the road to meet our friends, our alumni, who are so committed to our university and want to make gifts to universities, one of the top area that we promote is support for our students. And as you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were able to very rapidly get some gifts from our alumni and friends to help students who were in emergency situation. We had students who were caught in the pandemic, had to pay rent, had to stop their employment, so they had no revenues but expenses. And it was wonderful to see members in our communities come forward to help those students. And I have to tell you, one thing that really, to me, was impressive is that our alumni and friends came up with the idea of starting a fundraising campaign for that. So it's always been important to us to make sure that people, whatever social, particularly economic class they come from, are able to come to our university. Of course, we're doing a lot of effort now also to make our environment more welcoming and inclusive to people who come from particularly groups of people who have not attended universities in the past, Indigenous students, Black students. This is very important to have students who come from groups that have not participated in university education, particularly at our university in the past, to feel that and to know that they're welcome at our university and have the support they need as they join our community.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our third question, what is the university doing regarding climate change?
Oh, well, that's a very important question. It is one of the most important questions in our planet today. So we know that, and we're committed to that. So in terms of well, let's start with teaching, research, and then in our teaching. It's amazing to me how many programs include sustainability as part of the curriculum. So of course, you would expect it to be in our School of Environmental Sciences and Engineering, but it is throughout the university. It's being taught also in law, in management. So practically in every topic, there are elements of sustainability. So that's, and the students are very interested, of course. So we have a lot of engagement in the topic of sustainability. In research, I think you may know that one of the top research area at McGill is sustainability systems. And in fact, this is the academic focus of the New Vic project. So, and one of the things that happened at our university, which is very unusual, in fact, for Canadian universities certainly, is that we put 10 million out of our own fund, not research fund recruited from provincial or federal government, but our own fund to develop the sustainability system initiative. So, and that has created, I think, a great environment for people to work together on this topic. Of course, in our operation as well. So we are committing to a net zero carbon in 2040, which is 10 years ahead of most institutions. So we're aggressive in this commitment. We're transforming many aspects of the operation on our campus, electric vehicles, of course, one small thing, but no plastic bottles of water. You may have seen all the water stations on campus. We're reducing the waste also. So again, we have a very aggressive goal to reduce the waste on campus. So very well-developed plan for at the operation level. I should mention also on the renewable energy. We're investing money. It's quite expensive to move from, say, gas, in particular oil and gas, heating and so on, to electric and renewable, but we're doing that and spending the money. And also in our own endowment, we've committed to decarbonization. We've removed many of our assets in the most carbon emission industries, particularly oil and gas and cement industries are extremely high carbon emission industries. And so we're removing the assets. And we know that that might mean a smaller return because there are sometimes opportunities, particularly in the shorter term investment, to get more values from your investment in industries that are in a turbulent, or maybe turbulent is not the right way, but a period of big changes. So those who know how to trade can take advantage of that. I'm not one of those people, but I know that is a skill for the traders, is to take advantage of peak and valleys in the investment to garner more revenues. And that has been clear in our policy for our investment of our fund, our major endowment fund, that we would not play that game because we are committed to decreasing the carbon emission of our portfolio. So we're not into making short gains at the expense of not meeting that goal that is so important to us.
Great, thank you. Okay, so question number 4, in terms of access to education, what is the one opportunity or idea that motivates you the most?
Well, I really am extremely motivated by the role of university as a motor of social inclusion. I think it is absolutely crucial. The notion to me of equal opportunities for a good education is very, very important. I think every human being should have the opportunities to pursue their aspirations, to pursue their plans for an education. That to me is extremely important. And I often reflect on the fact that we're very fortunate in our country because Canada is a country where accessibility to university is high, and also it is high for many people. You just have to think of what's happening in Afghanistan to know how fortunate you are as a woman to be in this country and have the ability to have a great education. And I think we need to bring that sense of giving people an opportunity for great education outside of our own local environment or country, national environment, globally. I'll mention just one thing we've done. It's small, but I think it is important. So there's a university that I'm associated with. I'm part of their board, and it is the University of the People. So what they do is provide online free university education for people. People who go to the University of the People tend to be, not all of them, but many are in very, very difficult situations that would not allow them to go to universities. They're in refugee camps, or they're in very hardship situation in their own place, in their own city. And we have to know this, that even in Montreal, there are people who are in those situations. These situations exist across Canada. They exist even in our own city. And so they give opportunity for people to start their university education online, completely free. And we are joining a group of universities that are providing people who are part of this University of the People the opportunity to come for the last 2 years of their program in person at our university. Now, this is an important commitment, but it's not an easy commitment to meet, because typically a person in this situation will need the full amount of support. They simply don't have any ability to pay for their own food, their own lodging, their own transportation, their fees. So you have to think about giving them everything they need. So it's a very high commitment financially, but it's an important commitment. Otherwise, they won't be able to come. And I've been really thinking about this for a long time, because through my work at the World Economic Forum, I had the opportunity to meet people who are in refugee camps and who make so powerfully their case. They've done nothing wrong, but they have no opportunity. They don't even have a citizenship. And what are we going to do for those people? And it's something that I've thought a lot about, because I have this sense, I had for a long time this sense of, how can we help those people? McGill could open its doors for 2, 3 of these people, but that's a drop in the bucket. And my own sense was, it's a drop in the bucket, but if each one of us, if each universities that are in such a privileged position as we are at McGill, make that contribution, it's no longer a drop in the bucket. It becomes significant. And so, in fact, we were the first Canadian universities to do that. And now I'm going to try to convince my colleagues. And I know some of the colleagues are interested also to participate in that. So I think this is something we always have to think about. Some of the issues like inequities, they're so overwhelming that it's easy for any of us to say, there's nothing I can do that will make a difference. But at one point you have to say, alone, yes, I won't make a difference alone. McGill will not make a difference alone, but if all of us participate in that, we will make a difference. And so overcome that sense of maybe not being able to make a difference by really thinking of a collectivity of actions that will make a difference. So as you can see, I'm very passionate about that, so I better stop here, but I'm very, very passionate. But I have to tell you one little thing, because it relates to inclusion and climate change. So I was at a meeting, again, at the World Economic Forum, on what we need to do for sustainability. And it was part of a technology group. So it was people from large technology companies, leaders from the best engineering universities in the world. So we were all together. And at one point we were in breakout room because we were on virtual meeting last year. And the question was asked, what is the most significant action that we could take to address climate change and sustainability? And the answer that most impressed me came from my great colleague, who was the head of one of the best engineering universities in the world. And his answer was educate me. That was the #1 thing that would make a difference. And of course, you know, from us in Canada, as I say, 60% of our students are women. So we might not think about that, but across the world, it's far from being the case. And women have a lot of influence on their family, their neighbors, and so the women education is so important globally.
I agree. Well, I think we're going to ask our final question now. So our final question, how can you be sure that there is a future for the university in tomorrow's world?
Yes. So I think the answer to the question depends on another question to me. And that is, what is a university to you? And to me, a university is a community of learners, a community of people who are addressing important questions, who are challenging the status quo, who are exploring new direction, new paths in learning, who are curious. That's a community of learning. That's a university to me. And so, of course, we'll always have a university. Otherwise, we won't have a future. So it goes without saying that if we want a future for us as human beings and for the planet, we need universities. I think that it is fundamental. For many, many years, decades, I would say, the question I heard most often is, will there be a physical university? Because we were learning how to do online teaching and so on. And many people say, oh, the physical university will no longer be there. It's going to disappear. We won't need that. I think the pandemic has helped us answer that question. Because what we've known through the pandemic is that as human beings, we need to be together. We need to belong to a community. We need to interact with one another. This is what promotes those 4 buckets of skills I talked to you about: creativity and innovation and intra connection skills and so on. This is what brings this to us. It's being together in person. And the students, when there've been a lot of surveys of students across the world, but across our country, the students wanted to be back in person because they know that there's much more to education than going to classes. One of the great things, though, is that that is true for students who are in their first experience at university. But others now are also very much enjoying the silver lining of pandemic. If you already you've done a first experience in the university, you're now working, you have a family, you very much enjoy having the flexibility of online tools and so on. So I think we have learned that universities will certainly continue to exist for the very reason that that is so important to us as human beings, to be able to evolve as the human race. But also we have to start thinking much more about the different groups of learners and have better ways of, I think, them joining the university. So I'm very, very confident, as you can see, about the future of university. It's part of the future of the human race, as far as I'm concerned. I think universities will always exist. How they will be, I think, expressing that collectivity of learners working and learning together might be different, but and should be different. It should evolve. And so this is all about evolving and creating, I think, a future for not only our university, but for us collectively as a human race. That is a good one.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that there is a future for the university, because I've spent my entire working career at the university. So wonderful to hear your insights about the past and about the future. Dr. Fortier, we officially gift you for this great presentation. I'm going to show you the gifts one by one. Safety first. You get your first
yes,
mask.
I like that.
Something
to keeping my community safe. So thank you for that gift.
You're welcome. You will be receiving these packages. They are made from herbs and culinary herbs and pollinator plants that we grow in our McGill pollinator patches.
Yes.
So one is mint and one is sage. I hope you can use them.
Yes, I'm sure. Yes.
Just in case you have a moment to catch up on your crystallography, there's a
book. Oh, very good. Thank you.
I've earmarked it here. For the minerals, so you don't forget your minerals of most.
Oh, no. And all of the various, I remember my morphology classes.
Good. We have something from the museum that lets you put your eye here, and then it enlarges, and you see this Gorgosaurus in a 3D stereoscope.
Oh,
and you can share that with your best friends who also like dinosaurs.
Thank you.
And when the spring comes, I hope you can take a walk around McGill's leafy legacy. 50 trees, all listed here, and each tree has a story.
Oh, that's great. And I can share that with my friends, my family.
Please.
Yes, because that is a great thing to go for a walk together and see the various trees on campus. Yes, thank you.
So thank you to everyone who was able to join us tonight. We have to honor a time commitment Madame Fortier has to leave us. We will shorten a little bit our presentation tonight and say goodbye to you all, but ask you to have good holidays. Take a break. Enjoy the time you have with your friends, your family. Mini-Science for 2022 will start March 23rd. The neuroscientists will tell us about new frontiers in their work, in their research, in their progress. That is a free series. We may hybridize it. We may present it completely in person. We don't know, but rest assured it will be preserved by McGill YouTube channel forever.
Merci.
See you in the new year. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. And bonne saison des fêtes à vous tous. Bye bye.